Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, July the 16th, year 2014, show number 1016. I am your host, Shawn King. Thank you guys very much for joining us here on the live version of the show, which is what we're doing right now. Or if you're tuned into the archive, thanks very much for listening via the archive. On tonight's show, we're going to have our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at Loop Insight talking about the Apple IBM deal. What do you think of it? Send me an email, as always, to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. Love getting emails from you guys about any of the things that we talk about or any things that you think about are interesting in the world of Apple, Mac, iOS, OS X, 10, Yosemite, whatever. Email me, Shawn@yourmaclifeshow.com during the week or during the show live right now on air at yourmaclifeshow.com. Well, like I said, we'll talk to Jim Dalrymple about this, but right now it's big. There's no other way to describe it. It's freaking huge that Apple and IBM have done this. Now, some people are saying that they've been working on this for 2 years. No, they haven't. It's probably really been only the last 6 months they've been working on the details of this. Oh, crap. Hang on a second. I forgot something. My beverage. Hang on. I'll be right there. Wait. Was just thinking how parched I was and realized I didn't have a beverage in my hand. Tonight's beverage of choice is one of my favorite Irish lagers, Harp. Now that I've turned it upside down, I'm probably going to explode. I mean, hang on a second, let me open this thing up really slowly. Harp is a great Irish beer. It's not like people think of Guinness when I think of Irish beers. Harp is anything like that. It's a lager, so it's much lighter than Guinness, which is called a stout. When I'm not in the mood for a Guinness, which I'm rarely in the mood for a Guinness, I like Harp. Oh, that's some good beer. And then also later on tonight's show, in our starting point photography segment, we're going to be talking about RAW versus JPEG. Now, if you are strictly an iPhone shooter photographer, don't worry about RAW versus JPEG. The iPhone shoots in JPEG, and that's all you need to know. But if you have a higher end point and shoot, if you have a mirrorless camera, certainly if you have a DSLR, you have the option to shoot in either RAW or JPEG. And I'll explain what that is and the advantages and disadvantages of both those formats later on in the show. I want to send a thank you out to the nice folks at MacFun at macfun.com, joby.com, Epson at epson.com, the nice folks at oloclip.com, lowpro.com, backblaze.com, and pixelmator.com. We're going to be giving away a little later on the show in the starting point photography segment 3 more copies of 3 months worth of free Backblaze software backup. And we're also going to be giving away another copy of the MacFun software suite that they've given us to give away to you guys. So thanks very much to all those companies for that. We're doing a starting point photography tips and tricks section this Friday. What time is it going to be on this Friday? Hang on, let me get my email to find out. I've forgotten when it's going to be. It's going to be 6 p.m. Pacific time this Friday. So if you're free that time, 6 p.m. Pacific time this Friday, please join us in the tips and tricks segment. I'm doing it for one of our listeners who is in Australia. So the time zone means it's going to be, I think she said it's 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. her time on Saturday morning. So I figured I'd open up the rest of you guys. So we have a maximum of 5 students per class. So right now we've got 1. If you want to join us, send me an email to Shawn@yourmaclifeshow.com and I'll get you slotted in there. You have to be able to use Google Hangouts because the tips and tricks class is live video where I do the tips and tricks of photography class live for you via Google Hangouts. So hopefully you'll enjoy that. If you want to join us, you want to take better pictures, this is the way to do it. We're also going to be giving away some, like I said, giving away stuff. Make sure you have your entry form in. You go to the website at yourmaclifeshow.com. Right there at the top of the page is a Friends of YML, a FLYML entry form. You fill that entry form out. It sends me an email. I drop your name into the virtual hat where you can win some fabulous prizes. If you're a subscriber to Your Mac Life, and quite frankly, I like subscribers the best, if you're a subscriber to Your Mac Life, I've already done that for you. Your subscription automatically gets you entered into every single one of our contests. So subscribe to Your Mac Life for $2, $5, $10, $15, whatever amount of money you'd like a month. You go to the website at yourmaclifeshow.com. On the right-hand side, left-hand side, I keep doing that, left-hand side, you can see the subscription form where you can click on the little button, and from your major credit card or your PayPal account, it sends money to me once a month. So thanks very much for doing that if you so choose. Like I said, email to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. Did you guys see this story real quick off the top? The idea of this guy who started a Kickstarter project for potato salad. He was trying to raise $10. He ended up raising like $60,000. This is insane. This is utterly batshit crazy that this wasn't a scam of some kind. This was real. $60,000 this guy has raised to make potato salad. Now the thing is, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not paying anyone for potato salad unless I've tried it first. Because potato salad is quite personal. You know, you got to get it right. Some folks don't like, real mayonnaise-y potato salad. Some people like mashed potato salad. Some people like potatoes that are chunked with the skin on, the skin off. And potato salad is almost as individual as your family. I think I'm willing to bet that most of us only like the potato salad that our mom made. Because I know that's the way I am. It's got to be really creamy. It's got to be chunks of potatoes. It can't be mashed up potatoes. It's got to have certain things. It's got to have like green onions in it. Egg, obviously. Preferably with skin on. I remember my mom's potato salad using PEI red potatoes. Oh, so good. Makes my mouth water just thinking about my mom's potato salad. And so, potato salad I had anywhere else, didn't like. Like Kentucky Fried Chicken potato salad? Oh, vile, disgusting. Non-creamy potato salad? No, I wouldn't touch it. It's so funny. It's a bizarre concept that, first of all, Kickstarter, I'm already biased against Kickstarter. But the idea that someone could raise $60,000 on a Kickstarter to make potato salad just pisses me off. I can't raise money to advertise our photography classes, but this guy makes $60K potato salad. $50K now, Brian Monroe says. Still, that's $49,990 more than you should have gotten. What else is weird that happened this week? The other, I don't know if some of you guys may have seen me talking about this on Twitter today. The idea that Marco Arment, Marco.org. Marco is a developer, well-known developer, has created some great software. I mean, I was an Instapaper user many years ago. Has come out with a new podcasting app called Overcast. And that's great. It's fantastic that Marco has done this. The problem is, because Marco is, for lack of a better term, friends with a lot of the people in the Macintosh community, you can't tell if the reviews of Overcast are honest. It's a downside of the incestuous nature of the Macintosh media. It's a small group of people that generally know everyone else in the group. And so when you see people who have said in the past they know and like Marco, reviewing Marco software, to me that's suspicious. I don't want to throw suspicion on their review, but you still have to be a little bit suspicious. These folks should not be reviewing software of people who are friends of theirs, or who have advertised on their website, or who they have that kind of relationship with. There's plenty of people out there who don't know Marco at Macworld, at Mac Observer, at iMore, at TUAW, all those places, who could review this software without the perception of bias. That's the problem. It's a perception of bias. There may not, in fact, be a bias. And the software may be, for lack of a better term, perfect the way it is, and therefore it deserves a 5-star review. The problem is, there's still that nagging doubt in my head is, you're being nice to Marco because you know Marco and like Marco. I mean, one review remarked on the color of the that app that Marco chose, how it was a bold choice. It's orange. How's that a bold choice? It just doesn't make any sense. Mosquito says, I review your podcast and we're friends. We're friends, right? Yeah, but I think that's different. You're reviewing the podcast from the point of view of a amateur listener, of posting a review on the iTunes store or your website, whatever it might be, of someone who's a listener, not a professional reviewer, which in theory these people are. Marco called Jim out for reviewing the iPad Air after using it for about 2 days, but these reviews today are okay. Well, Marcus Mendez, one of the things is Marco has seeded many of these people with beta product for weeks or months ahead of time. So a lot of these reviews were of a product that was fully baked, say, a month ago, 2 weeks ago. And so they were using a full version. Marco just hadn't released it yet. It's a very common thing in that regard, Marcus, the sense that here's something, use it for a couple of weeks, let me know whatever problems you have, write your review, but don't post it until this date and time. The Apple IBM story, I said in the pre-show, that had been around since sometime over the weekend. Murmurs started to happen. And then Monday morning, Apple started to call in people to give them the background on the story. But the embargo was till 1:30 on Tuesday. So these folks knew about it, let's say Monday morning, wrote about it Monday or Tuesday morning, and sat on the news until 1:30 p.m. Pacific time on Tuesday. That's a little different too. It's not the timing of the reviews that I have a problem with. And like I said, this may be a great app. I don't use it. I'm never going to use it. So I'm not saying it's a bad app. I'm saying that the process is a little suspect and shouldn't be. You should say, I'm a friend of Marco's. I recuse myself from this review. I'm going to hand it off to somebody else. So, again, it's no slam. And I'm completely ambivalent about Marco as a human being. Again, I've liked his software. I've used his stuff in the past. His online persona, he gets kind of grating at times, a little whiny at times. The whole coffee thing just confuses me. The guy's insane about coffee, just batshit crazy about coffee. I have no personal feelings toward Marco whatsoever, good or bad. I'm completely meh about Marco. So that's not what this is about. This isn't about me disliking Marco or disliking Marco's software or anything else along those lines, or jealousy or other things I've been accused of. It's got nothing to do with it. It's the perception of bias that happens a lot, unfortunately, in the small, incestuous Macintosh community that we're involved in. Mosquito says, Marco has occasionally been a bit of a precious snowflake on certain issues. Yeah, he has. There's no doubt about it. But then again, yeah, a lot of us have. It's not an uncommon thing with human beings in general. I got to fix this, folks. This one poster behind me. It keeps flapping in the breeze. You, sit still. It's just making me nuts. Over in my right peripheral vision, I could just see this thing flapping along. I just stop it. Sit still. Those are, by the way, pictures I printed off on the fantastic Epson R2000 printer that the folks at Epson have got me reviewing. We've got a interview with Epson on August 7th, I believe, about the printer, about Epson in general. There's a reason why every professional photographer who prints at home prints off an Epson. Everyone I've spoken to uses Epson. They are the best, bar none, when it comes to home printing, when it comes to this kind of level of printing of professional photographer, professional prints. I'm completely amazed and blown away at the color quality and the fidelity of these images. MacMan says, that pic to the right of that one looks great. To the right of this one, MacMan, this one is the Old Town Clock in Halifax, Nova Scotia. This is an iconic image from my hometown of Halifax, which reminds me, if you just want to check it out, this is not something I'm saying you guys, here, go buy these. Check out the website society6.com/Shawn King. Yeah, MacMan, it's not a lighthouse. It is from 1803. This Old Town Clock was built in the center of Halifax, Nova Scotia. I can see you on the the video why you think that would be a lighthouse. It's lighthouse shaped, but it's actually a beautiful, wonderful old clock. The hill it's on is a hill we used to go sledding, tobogganing when we were kids. So it's got some, obviously in my hometown, special meaning to me. But check out now. Society 6 has this website that I can upload my prints and you can buy them, which is kind of cool. So, for example, MacMan, if you wanted to buy that print at an 8x8 inch size, it would be $16. If you wanted the extra large size, it would be $45. I don't know if that's a good deal or not, and that's not the reason why I'm using this website. I'm using this website to sort of test it out. But if you've got any friends or if yourself have got some sort of art that you would like to sell, this is an interesting website. I've used Cafe Press many, many years ago. I haven't used it in a long time, so I'm not sure if it's the same as before. I was never crazy about the prices that Cafe Press charged. This is kind of neat, this website, because I can do, I wonder if I can get a coffee mug. Let's see if can I get a coffee mug with that image on it? No, the only coffee mug I get is Nova Scotia Beach. But check it out. Just wander on the site. Like I said, if you have someone that you know that is an artist and does want to sell their work via a art website, society6.com is actually very interesting and very cool. Zazzle, Mosquito says Zazzle for things like T-shirts. Yeah, I don't think any of my stuff would work on a T-shirt. They offer T-shirts on Society 6. But from what I've seen, I don't like the look of any of the T-shirt stuff. But check it out if you like. And again, I'm not saying buy this. I'm using it as a test. If I make some bucks off it, great, fantastic. But it's not the reason why I'm doing it. I'm doing it just to test it out and see how the website looks. Later on the show, again, we're going to be talking about RAW versus JPEG for you folks whose cameras can work in RAW or work in JPEG. And I'll give you the fine points, the good and bad about both of those. And later on, we're going to have our prize draw, thanks to the folks at macfun.com. We'll be giving away some of their software. And to backblaze.com. We're giving away some free month of free backup, a full unlimited backup from backblaze.com. After this short break, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com. This is your Mac Life. Welcome back to Your Mac Life, folks. I'm Shawn King, joined on our phone by our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Shawn. How are you?
I am good. Thanks very much. Hopefully you had a good week. The big news, obviously, Apple and IBM made a... I can guess what you're going to say, but how would you characterize this deal?
Massive.
Exactly. I didn't want to put words in your mouth. Not that I could ever do that, but it feels that way, doesn't it? I mean, why do you think this is such a big deal?
Well, Apple has always been kind of hit with, no enterprise type stuff.
Yeah.
And they've tried it in the past, and they haven't really done that well. So now they have a deal where they can work with IBM, who's, one of the biggest,
Yep.
and work in the area that Apple has the most strength right now, and that's mobile. When you can get a company like IBM to help sell your hardware and help sell your software because it's the best out there.
Yeah.
And now you got some stuff going on. Now they have instantly, and we see it as a one-day deal. It was announced yesterday, so within 24 hours, they have a pretty comprehensive strategy for enterprise.
I love the way it was described by. I watched the video with both the CEO of IBM and Tim Cook, and the idea of them describing this as puzzle pieces, I think was brilliant from the point of view of there's no overlap with these two companies. They're not competitors.
Right.
This is not Samsung and Apple where they're frenemies. This is not Microsoft and Apple where they are competitors but also cooperators. This is two companies that have nothing in common from that point of view. So they can fit into where the other is weakest and take advantage of where the other is strongest.
Yeah, and part of this deal is that enterprise apps are going to be ported over. So, IBM can go to its customers now and say, okay, you want, servers and desktops and, you want all of the strategy laid out for you. And now we can add mobile to that. And, since probably 2008, executives have been walking into these large companies saying, yeah, I bought an iPhone and I'm going to use it. So make it work.
Yeah, exactly.
And just making IT pros pull their hair out trying to, secure everything. And Apple has a responsibility as well in this to make sure that its hardware and its software is ready for the professional IT market. And I think that they've gone a long way to do that in the past, 5 years, and remote wipe and, all that kind of stuff. This is the type of stuff that Apple really needs.
One of the other things that I saw that in that interview with, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting her name, the IBM of, the CEO of IBM, was they said they'd started talking 2 years ago. Now, some people are assuming this means they've been talking about this deal for 2 years. They haven't. They've just been getting to know each other for 2 years, kind of like feeling each other out. It started about 6 months ago. They started talking about this actual deal. And one of the ways I've been describing this is IBM just became an Apple value-added reseller, didn't they? I mean, they just became the biggest Mac reseller in the world outside of Apple themselves.
Yeah, that's pretty much what's going to happen.
Because a lot of folks don't seem to realize that that's what Apple has said to IBM. They said, we'll help you port over whatever tools you have to iOS, and then you go to a company, a Fortune 500 or any company, and ask that company, what tools do you need? And now IBM can say, we've got tools covering the spectrum of what you would need. While this is an exclusive deal, it doesn't mean that IBM is only going to sell Apple products anymore. IBM will still, if you're a BlackBerry house, you'll still be able to buy whatever BlackBerry services BlackBerry has or IBM has. But what the advantage for IBM is, they've opened this up so that they can have a much larger range of products for them to sell.
So was that whole BlackBerry thing a joke, or?
Yeah, no kidding. Jim, I'm just got a package. The fast guy came late, so.
Wow.
Yeah, no kidding. He's late, and I'm trying to get him because I want the package too. So, anyway, is there any downside to this? I saw one idiot said this was just Apple's way of dumping iPads that weren't selling anyway. That's obviously
oh my God.
That's the single stupidest thing I've heard with regards to this story. But is there any downside that you see?
Well, there's no downside that I see. See, the thing for this whole thing for me is that what I would worry about if Apple came out and said, okay, we have this new strategy and we're going to enter the enterprise market in a serious way, I would have concerns that Apple was losing its focus or could lose its focus. And yeah, that would kind of bother me. But doing it this way, Apple's focus is where it should be, and that's making money from building better products, better iPhones, better iPads. Yeah. For anybody to say that the iPad isn't selling and Apple's just dumping them, they're not paying attention.
Yeah, I agree. I think
that's just silly.
This deal may not be in 5 years or 10 years the gigantic, earth-shattering thing we think it is right now, but this is not a bad idea for Apple and IBM. This is a good idea. As I said, there's that corporate speak word. There's synergy here. There's the puzzle pieces here. This makes perfect sense. They fit really well, better than any other two companies could possibly do this. IBM has got a huge. We've kind of, as consumers, kind of forgotten about IBM since they got rid of their laptop business to Lenovo, almost 10 years ago now. And they've sort of been off our radar, but they are still huge in the enterprise market. They are arguably the biggest group that sells into enterprise, and they know enterprise so much better than Apple ever could. I mean, if Apple wanted to do enterprise on their own, they'd have to compete with IBM, and they wouldn't want to do that.
Right. Has it been 10 years?
I think it's been that long. I mean, we were all surprised when IBM got out of the PC business. Remember, IBM started it many, many years ago, but they sold their ThinkPad line to Lenovo. I know someone in the IRC chat room will look this up and correct us, but it feels like about 10 years ago that happened, and they immediately fell off the consumer radar. But that also gave them the leg up to get into enterprise. The old line for you folks who may be too young to remember it was you'll never get fired for buying IBM. And then it became you'll never get fired for buying Microsoft. Now, the enterprise guys can look at this Apple stuff. The IT guys can say, hey, it's being backed by IBM. The on-site support is going to be from guys I already know, IBM. Everything that I know is going to be from IBM, and I trust IBM. So this is a brilliant move from Apple to get into the enterprise with a whole lot less effort than if they were going to do it by themselves.
Well, if you're doing it by yourselves, oh God, what a mess that would be. And like I said, they've already tried it before to get into the enterprise, and they've tried. I think that they've done a decent job in the past few years of showing the IT pros that the iPhone was ready for them, with all of these enterprise type features. But there's a difference in being ready for it and actively pursuing that market. Yeah. And that's what they're doing now. By having, these enterprise specific apps ported over to iOS, and by having IBM actively selling it, now that's a whole different story.
And also, this was asked by Brian Monroe in the IRC chat room. Does this mean they're selling Macintoshes? Sorry, Jim. Does this mean they're selling Macintoshes too? Yeah, this is, as I said, this is IBM becoming an Apple value-added reseller. Whatever Apple sells, these guys, IBM will be able to sell. We're talking about mobility and iOS and iPads and iPhones. But if some company wants 1,000 Macintosh desktops, if they want 1,000 MacBooks and MacBook Pros, IBM will now be able to sell them those things.
I didn't know that they do that, but
yeah,
okay.
That's what I've heard. That's what I've heard from other folks who were in the meetings with Apple on Tuesday. This covered the entire Apple line. If Apple sold it, then IBM can sell it. Again, that's why that's why I said IBM is becoming a value-added reseller for Apple. Whatever Apple products they sell, IBM will be able to have in their catalog, in their price list, in whatever, and sell it to other companies. Now, who do you think this is going to hurt the most, Jim? We've seen people talk everywhere from BlackBerry to Android to Samsung to Microsoft. Is this deal going to seriously hurt any of those companies or anyone else that I haven't mentioned?
Well, I think that BlackBerry's already out of the picture. Yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody really cares about them anymore. So I don't believe that, it's not the last nail in BlackBerry's coffin. I think that's 3 or 4 nails ago.
Yeah, this is throwing dirt. This is throwing dirt on the coffin that's already in the ground.
Yeah, I mean the dirt's just piling up now. Right. I mean, they should have dug that grave 3 or 4 feet deeper. But yeah, I don't see this as something that that's going to affect BlackBerry, because I don't think it matters much. Now, what I do think it'll affect is Google and Samsung and Microsoft.
How so?
Because, well, Google definitely wants to get Android in there as quickly as possible into the enterprise market, and Samsung would definitely love to have their handsets in there. Microsoft in the same way. I think Microsoft would love to have the Surface Pro be, the de facto standard for the enterprise market. But I don't think Microsoft had a chance of doing that with the Surface Pro. I think Google and Samsung did have a chance of going in and doing that, but Apple kind of cut them off at the knees here with this IBM deal, because you said it a while ago, people in the enterprise will trust IBM.
Yep. And,
if that's what they're recommending, and, at this point, IBM is going to walk in with the whole package.
Yep.
And, they're going to have the apps for iOS. They're going to, for iPad and iPhone. So they're going to have everything. And if you want everything, we can give it to you. Here's your price.
Yeah. I think that's the key too, is that this has cut those companies off at the knees in a way they weren't anticipating. I think they were expecting enterprise to just naturally gravitate towards the Windows market, because a lot of them are already heavily Windows based, and then maybe naturally gravitate towards Android, because Android, it can be argued, is in enterprise bulk going to be cheaper. It's going to be easier. You can do your own thing with Android software. You can create your own Android OS if you wanted to. I mean, in theory, Ford could create their own Android OS to run on their cars if that's what they wanted to do. So I think that's the way it felt, is that this was going to happen anyway. It was going to happen on the time frame of Android. But when Apple came in, and whatever reason, whether it's the relationship between the two CEOs or the actual puzzle piece thing, this really sends a message to corporate America that says, I trust IBM, and I trust whoever IBM trusts, and therefore I'm going to trust Apple.
Right, and I don't think it's I don't think it's to the point where where it was years ago, where people kind of laughed at IBM, in the desktop market, the whole ThinkPad thing, and people trusted them, but then they started to not trust them,
Yep.
But in the enterprise, it's a different story. So I think that this is a good thing for both companies, and both companies will benefit from this deal going well.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing. When you can do a partnership where both companies benefit equally, then you've got a good thing going.
Yeah,
and I think that's what's going to happen here.
I agree. Everyone's happy when that the deal is going, no matter what you do, the deal is going to benefit both companies. IBM can still keep doing what IBM does well, and Apple can still keep doing what Apple does well. And at the end of the day, at the end of the week, end of the year, both companies are going to make more money because of the deal. Who was it in the IRC chat room? His Shadow says, this short circuits 10 years of Apple rolling its own enterprise services. And not only that, it short circuits Apple doing this badly. Because, as you said earlier, and every IT guy knows, Apple just sort of keeps sticking their toe in the IT waters, in the enterprise waters, not getting dead serious about it. And so IT has never traditionally trusted Apple as a company. They may like their own personal iPhones, they may like their iPads, but when it came time to deploy 1,000 of these things, IT was like, I don't know. But now with IBM, boom, not a problem. This is going to be, I think, a huge, huge deal for both companies.
Well, and Apple, Apple's not going to have to do anything any different than what they do now.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're sticking their neck out into IT and, doing something crazy. They're just going to make iPhones and iPads and some software.
Yep.
And that's what they do now. Apple can continue to focus on, the whole consumer market and where they make their money.
Mm-hmm.
And, as a consumer and a watcher of Apple, what I'm looking for is to see that the company is pursuing all the avenues that it can to make the most money that it can and to broaden its product base.
Dave D in the IRC chat room has got a couple of great comments. Enterprise requires a huge amount of hand-holding, which Apple traditionally has not been very, very good at. And he says, Shawn King, when FedEx says jump, IBM says how high. Again, something Apple has not been very good at. So yeah, I think that's the reason why Apple was brilliant to partner with the most trusted name in enterprise in IT and allow them to do the heavy lifting of the hand-holding and how high to jump and that kind of stuff. And like you said, Apple will just keep doing what they need to do. I don't think we're going to see an IBM iPod. I don't think we're going to see an IBM iPhone or things like that. Apple's going to keep down their roadmap, their path. And the IBM CEO has seen what Apple's planning on doing in the next year, 2, 5, maybe even 10 years. And the IBM CEO has gone, yeah, we can work with that. We have no problem with that. We see where you're going. And vice versa. Apple now knows what IBM is going to be doing for the next 5 years. And Apple's saying, yeah, we like the direction you're taking your company.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Really? You don't think that these two companies would have shown their roadmaps to each other for at least the next 5 years?
No, I don't think not for 5 years.
I don't mean in granular detail, but I think the CEO of IBM knows what Apple is planning for at least the next version of the iPhone, probably the next 2 or 3 versions of iOS and iPads.
Well, I think maybe from an enterprise level, things that would affect IBM, maybe. But I don't think Apple would open up like that to anybody.
ArcSign says, 5 to 10 years down the line, does Apple just take over IBM?
There's a good question.
Yeah. I mean,
you never know. I mean,
they certainly could buy them outright, and wouldn't that be wild, considering where us old timers have been? We remember back in the mid '90s when the rumor was IBM was gonna buy Apple.
Yeah, right. Well, everybody was going to buy Apple. Sony, Disney, everybody.
I think Mac Central was going to buy Apple at one point. I mean, you had the money. It was like 12 cents in the dollar. Wouldn't have been a problem. But yeah, it's an interesting thought. I think Apple does a very good job of knowing what they know, certainly under Tim Cook, knowing what they know and knowing what they don't know, and partnering up with those folks who do what Apple doesn't do well. I can't see... It might happen, but I can't see Apple needing to or wanting to take on all the responsibility that goes with buying a company like IBM. I think they'd be perfectly happy just doing what they're doing and letting IBM do what they do.
Couldn't agree more.
Dave D
There's
said,
no reason for Apple to buy them. I mean, sure, they could, but why bother?
Yeah. Dave D says, Shawn, the enterprise is concerned about security above all. I'm sure Apple and IBM will work out a common roadmap there. Something else we as consumers don't see from a business or enterprise or IT point of view is the huge and necessary security issues and concerns they have. The original iPhone, there was no way that was ever going to get deployed in the enterprise because it didn't have security. As Tim Cook said in his interview with CNBC, it wasn't until the iOS 2, they started to build in things security-wise. And now what's going to happen is IBM is going to be able to tell Apple, hey, in this version of the OS, can you add this, this, and this to make it even more secure so we can lock down even more things?
Now, that guy, whoever said the comment about security.
Yeah, Dave D.
Yeah, he nailed what I was trying to say a minute ago in that if IBM saw anything in Apple's roadmap, it would have to do with things that would affect them, like security.
Sure. Yeah.
Here's what we plan on doing in the next two versions of iOS,
Mm-hmm.
and IBM could chime in and say, we'd really like you to do this too, or, that's not good enough, or, those are great features. Yes, go with those.
Yeah.
So, I think that's what Apple would have, if they were opening up at all, that's what they would have showed them. IBM is certainly going to give its 2 cents worth and say, this in the iPhone would be very beneficial in the enterprise market. So if you can add this, laser beam that will kill anybody that tries to steal it, then that would be great.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and Tim can take that idea if he wants.
Exactly, that's right.
I don't need credit.
You don't need credit for that.
So yeah, that's the kind of stuff that I think Apple would probably have shown them. Is this is what we plan, and that's about it. I wouldn't expect them to show any more.
I love the picture that was passed around as soon as this deal was announced of Steve Jobs. This is a picture from Andy Hertzfeld of Steve Jobs at the IBM building somewhere, I think in New York City, kind of flipping off the IBM logo. It's a very funny picture. I mean, it was back in the mid '80s where
kind of flipping off.
Okay, he's completely flipping off IBM. That was a hilarious picture, and something that the new Steve Jobs, the post 1997 Steve Jobs would never have done, and that Tim Cook, I don't think Tim Cook would ever have done it anyway. But the whole attitude has completely changed with regards to IBM. This is not, as Philip Elmer Fudd tried to portray it, the fourth go round with Apple and IBM. These are two completely different companies than when Steve Jobs flipped them off in 1984. This is not,
right.
They're no way the same as those companies were 30 years ago. IBM is a completely different company. Apple is a completely different company. So I don't see this as the fourth go round with Apple and IBM. I think it's the first go round for the 21st century version of Apple and IBM.
Right. No, I agree with you. I mean, before they were, partnering on things, they were fighting about things, they were, down in the trenches, kicking each other, and then they were shaking hands. This is completely different.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, at that point, they had, they did have some partnerships, especially with the chipsets and things like that, but, it's just not the same because now they're not stepping on each other's toes.
Yep.
If IBM doesn't live up to what Apple expects of them, they'll know. But I don't see how IBM couldn't live up because they're already running a multi-billion-dollar business based on this.
Yep.
So how could they not live up to Apple's expectations?
The only thing I found really interesting was there was no talk, and I've heard from people when asked, both Apple and IBM offered no comment. There was no talk as to how long this exclusive deal was going to last. No one said 5 years, no one said 10 years, no one said any time frame at all. Does that give you any sort of pause to wonder about the deal?
No, not really. What kind of exclusivity?
Well, I mean, we remember the exclusive deal that the iPhone had with AT&T and allowed Apple to build the brand for 5 years. It allowed AT&T to grab market share for 5 years. The concern would be that is if this was only a 1 year deal, then in a year and a half, IBM could take what they learned from Apple and then go partner with Microsoft or Android or those kinds of things. That's the only concern I would have. But I would assume this is at least a 5 year exclusive deal.
Well, yeah, it could be. I mean, I don't know. I think in order for IBM to go to enterprise customers and say we have a full package, don't they have to be confident that the package is actually good?
Yeah.
I mean, Google Android is full of holes.
Yep.
Windows just sucks. So,
Dave D asked in the IRC chat room, he says, I couldn't quite figure out what the exclusivity was. The exclusivity is that basically neither company will partner with any other company to do this kind of enterprise work. That IBM isn't going to port their products over to Android before iOS. This is an iOS exclusive deal for the software going forward. Anything in the past is obviously still allowed. That Microsoft won't be selling Android phones alongside of Apple phones or iPhones and things like that. That's where the exclusivity comes in. You just basically say, I'm not going to sleep with your sister kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know where I came up with that one. Sorry about that.
I really don't know. I didn't want to get into that.
Okay, thanks. And last but not least, this was an interesting story, if only because it felt like it was 8 months old. The iPhone 5S, the best-selling smartphone in the world. I literally, when you posted this, I had to check to make sure you had the dates right. The iPhone 5S was announced 8 months ago.
Yeah.
There has been approximately 17,000 other phones released in those 8 months. And yet
Just by Samsung.
Just by... Yeah, no kidding. 10 of them yesterday, for crying out loud. Yeah, just by, it just kind of blew me away that it was still worldwide, not just in the U.S. Usually you see these things are, and you kind of understand it in the U.S., but worldwide, it's still the number one selling phone on the freaking planet, beating everything Samsung has to offer. That's just, to me, I think that's just remarkable.
It really is. I mean, it's hard to imagine that that's the way that it is. And they did say, although they didn't give any numbers, they did say that the Galaxy S5 was pretty far behind in second place.
Yeah.
So, how far behind? I don't know, but they did say that. So
now, the interesting thing that I see from these kinds of stories is, how is that going to affect Apple's iPhone 6 sales? If so many people have bought the iPhone 5S in the last 8 months, it's unlikely that a significant majority of those people will buy an iPhone 6 when it gets released in late September or early October. That's the only concern I would have. But it does mean that iPhone 7 in 2 years will have a great adoption cycle. So these things are very cyclical. Obviously, there's probably X number of people with the iPhone 4 who will update to a 6, but not as many of those as who have the iPhone 5.
I don't know that I agree with you there either, because I think that it is cyclical. So those people are going to be able to, the people that upgraded first are going to be looking for an upgrade now. So I think that whatever iPhone comes out next is going to be just fine.
Oh, it's still going to be huge. Yeah, and there's no doubt about it. It's still going to be, and it will be the number one selling iPhone for 8 months afterwards too. I don't have any doubt about that. I don't think when it comes to phone versus phone as opposed to OS versus OS, I think there is no doubt that the iPhone, whatever version you want to talk about, is going to be the number one seller for at least the next 2 or 3 versions. At the very least, the next 2 versions, because Apple's got just such huge mind share in the market.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's going to happen, no matter how much Samsung may not want it to. But in that list also, it's important to note that the iPhone 5C was in 5th place. The 4S was in 6th.
Yeah.
And from number 1 to number 5, the 2, 3, and 4 positions were Samsung.
Yeah.
So just to make clear that, not all Apple phones took the top spot. But from the sounds of it, the iPhone 5S took a big enough spot that the Samsungs weren't going to catch up.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. Don't forget, Jim Dalrymple does his own podcast called Amplified, or you can get it on the iTunes store under the name of Amplified. You and Ben did a show. Is it Ben? Who the hell's your co-host? Dan Benjamin. Dan Benjamin. I got the name backwards. You guys did a show this morning, didn't you?
Yeah.
It's up on the Amplified website, 5by5.tv/amplified. You can check it out there. Or the easiest thing to do is go to the iTunes store and just do a search for Amplified, subscribe to it, and it pops up into your podcast app automatically each and every time that Jim does it. Jim, thanks for doing this, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Shawn.
Talk to you soon. See ya.
Bye.
It was Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com. Sorry. My phone's making all that noise. Thanks very much to Jim for joining me here this week. I want to say email on air at yourmaclifeshow.com. We're going to do our starting point photography segment. Hang on, let me turn this off to make sure. Startingpointphotography.com segment. You can go to the website at startingpointphotography.com to check out what I do there. I've just been playing around with, how many of you guys, here's a question. You folks in the RC chat room can answer it quickly. How many of you use Flipboard? You know the iOS app, mostly probably just an iPad app called Flipboard. Are you familiar with it? I'm curious because I don't use Flipboard. When Flipboard first came out, I didn't use it to use like an RSS feed because I have way too much stuff in my RSS feed to flip through each article. I need just a text listing of my RSS stuff. So I sort of ignored Flipboard. A lot of other folks liked it, and the magazine style of it is kind of cool that you're flipping through stories. It's kind of neat. So when I started StartingPointPhotography.com, I fired up a Flipboard app, and I didn't use it very much. So again, I wasn't all that crazy about Flipboard. Until someone posted, they said they really liked the way they could get through stories, Starting Point Photography type stories, on Flipboard. I started to look at it a little more closely, and I kind of like it now. Because you can create your own magazines on Flipboard, which is really kind of cool. So if you have a particular thing that you want to talk about, a subject matter that you think is important, you can go to Flipboard and create these stories on your own. And it's really kind of neat the way, even on the desktop, the way it works. So if you get a chance, go to flipboard.com, download the app, check it out for yourself. Go to Flipboard.com and do a search for Starting Point Photography, and hopefully it will show up on the iOS app. Mosquito says there was a lot of talk about Flipboard for a couple of months and a wave of criticism because it was scraping other people's content. Yeah, but so does RSS feed. So does a lot of other things. Scrapes content. I understand the issues there. It's not something I'm worried about because I've got so many other things to worry about. One of the neat things about Flipboard, especially the latest versions, now you can add your own comments. You can add your own text to a story. So if you want to make a comment on a particular story, you can do that. But check it out if you get a chance. Wong J says, was away from keyboard. I missed the RAW versus JPEG part. No, I'm just about to get into it. Nice timing. Want to say thanks again to the wonderful companies who are supporting Starting Point Photography. Again, they are MacFun at macfun.com, Joby at joby.com, Epson.com, oloclip.com, lowpro.com, backblaze.com, and pixelmator.com. We're doing another photography. We're doing a Photography Secrets Revealed in Prince George, British Columbia, Canada, this September 20th, Saturday afternoon in Prince George, BC. If you happen to be in the area, let me know. We'll get you in. The last one we did was in Halifax, so the next one's going to be in Prince George. And this Friday evening at 6 p.m. Pacific time, if you're interested, we're doing the 2-hour version of the tips and tricks class segment of the bigger class. 2-hour class at 6 p.m. this coming Friday, the 18th of July. So if you're interested in that, send me an email to Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com, and we can fit you in. Remember, we got a maximum of 5 people in the class. We got one lady from Australia who's going to be doing. I love the idea of doing these things live for people literally around the world. I think that's just kind of mind blowing to me. Jason Painter was one of the students in Australia that I've done it for. I've done it for a guy in Germany. I've done it for people all over the U.S. and Canada, in England. That's just, to me, is really cool to be able to do live class around the world. So it's a neat thing. It's a thing of beauty. So check it out. If you're interested, startingpointphotography.com. If you want any more details, send me an email to Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com. Now, this is the segment where I said, if you are a iPhone shooter, don't worry about RAW versus JPEG. It's not important to you. It's not going to make a lot of difference because the iPhone only shoots in this format called JPEG. Now, everything, every document that we have on our computers has, even if you don't see it, has a document format. It could be .doc for document or I think it's XLS for Excel. When it comes to graphics, you've seen .gif for GIF or GIF, depending on which way you want to say it, and .jpg for JPEG or .png, a fairly new file format. We're talking about JPEGs. The iPhone shoots in this file format called JPEG, and JPEG is great because what JPEG does is it takes an image and squashes it down in such a way that you don't even see the difference for the most part. If you squash it a whole lot, you will. Remember back in the old days, we used to use stuff at expander to squash things? Well, JPEG does the same kind of thing, but it does it inside the camera, inside the iPhone, inside the point and shoot. And for the most part, that's great because for most of us, especially if you use an iPhone, you want to, after you take that picture, maybe you want to send it somewhere. You want to email it to your significant other. You want to post it to Facebook. You want to send it to Twitter. Well, the smaller file format of a JPEG allows you to do that more efficiently. The problem is JPEG is what's called a lossy compression format. In other words, what it does is it compresses your photo but throws away data, throws away color data. And for the most part, you as the photographer don't notice that until you start blowing things up or trying to manipulate the image. But the basic shot on your iPhone, when you take it as a JPEG, you're not going to notice. So don't worry about it if you're just a iPhone shooter. Now, I'm going to find this. I had it here a second ago. Let me grab my history. I know I had this article about RAW versus JPEG. I thought I had it ready and up and running, but of course not. Where'd it go? Did I throw it away? I probably threw it away because I'm stupid. So, I'm just going to do a search on my history to see if I can't find it. RAW. RAW versus JPEG. There it is. So, RAW is a file format used in all DSLRs, all digital single lens reflex cameras. It's used in most, I'll say all, mirrorless cameras. It's used in the high end of point and shoot cameras. Lower than that, the low end point and shoots, the cheapy Kodaks, things like that, probably not. And you can choose as the photographer whether you want to shoot in RAW file format or JPEG file format. Even some cameras will allow you to shoot in TIFF format too, but that's not what we're talking about here. RAW versus JPEG. And the way I describe RAW versus JPEG is, if you think of JPEG as being a chocolate chip cookie, it's round, it's perfect, and it has chocolate chips in it. And it tastes chocolatey good. It's a JPEG. The thing is, you can't change that chocolate chip cookie. Once it's cooked, once it's baked, it is what it is. You can break it up into a piece, but you cannot go back to what it was before you cooked it. That's kind of like what a JPEG is. Whereas a RAW file is the raw ingredients of that cookie. It's chocolate chips, it's flour and salt and water and egg and whatever the hell else you put in chocolate chip cookies. So you imagine that in front of you. And if you want to, you can add more egg, or you can put in raisins, or you can manipulate it in different ways. And therein lies the difference between RAW and JPEG. RAW is easier to manipulate after you take the image. JPEG is not. The downside of RAW is the file sizes are relatively huge. Relatively very, very big file sizes. I can open up, I think I've got one on the desktop here. I can open up a RAW file and right here on the screen, show it to you guys, and then show you the exact same JPEG, and you couldn't tell the difference. But the file sizes can be as much as a tenth the size. So I can go from a 30 megabyte RAW file to a 3 megabyte JPEG file. Big, big difference. What that means if you're shooting on the usual SD cards is you can get more JPEGs. You can take more JPEG pictures on, say, an 8 gigabyte card than you can RAW pictures on an 8 gigabyte card. So whether to shoot RAW or JPEG depends on what you're going to do with the image after you've taken the picture. So if all you ever do with your pictures is email them to friends and family, post them to Facebook, Instagram them, then shoot JPEG. If that's what you're doing, is you've got a way to do it automatically off your camera or off your iPhone or off your point and shoot or your mirrorless, then go ahead and shoot JPEG. Don't even worry about shooting RAW. The advantage of RAW is when I take a picture, I know where my camera is. I just realized usually I'm holding my camera. The advantage with RAW is I now take pictures without worrying about the color I see in the back of the camera. I worry about composition and I worry about light more than I worry about color fidelity off the back of the camera. And one of the reasons why is it's a little tiny screen. It's hard to see. I can't see whether or not that flower in the background is actually the red color I imagined it to be. I set my white balance to automatic, and again, all SLRs, all mirrorless and higher end point and shoots can set white balance. But I set mine to automatic because I know I'm shooting in RAW. I'm shooting cookie dough. And I know I'm going to bring my cookie dough into my computer, well, then make cookies. So I don't worry about all that kind of stuff when I'm shooting RAW. All I worry about is that I've got enough files, I've got enough cards for these giant file sizes. Usually my, on the Nikon, the RAW file format is what's called NEF, capital N, capital E, capital F. And those file sizes, I'm just looking on my desktop now to see what kind of file sizes I'm looking at. Let me see if I can't find an image here. Jeez, I got a lot of stuff on here. Where is that file? This is what the hell? Oh, God. I'm looking at 30 megabyte files. So obviously I can shoot a lot fewer of those than I could if they were JPEGs. But when I bring them into the computer, when I bring them into my photo editing app, for me, generally it's Lightroom, I can do a lot more manipulation of that image than I could if it was a JPEG. I can tweak the colors. I can tweak the white balance. I can tweak to my heart's content. Tweak my butt off when it comes to manipulating an image and getting the image to be the color fidelity, the highlights and shadow fidelity that I saw when I took the image. Or even going beyond that and doing other things with it too. MacMan's got a good point. He says, I tend to think of RAW as the negative and JPEG as the print from the film days. It's a good way of describing it. It's especially good for beginners because if you're a beginner and don't understand what RAW as a negative means, then shoot JPEG. Now, that being said, you can still do some changes to JPEGs. You can open a JPEG up in Preview or iPhoto and still, correct red eye, obviously do crops and do some color manipulation and management. There's just more color data in the file when it comes to RAW than there is in the JPEG. Remember we said JPEG was a lossy compression. It threw data away when it saved the JPEG. That's why it squashed the file sizes. So you can do some manipulation in iPhoto, in Preview of a JPEG, but not nearly as much as you can if you had the original RAW file, the original 30 megabyte file versus the original one or the JPEG 3 megabyte file. Mosquito says you should usually see a difference between the two. The JPEG is processed. It'd give me an excuse to get something like Lightroom to manage photo or images. I'm actually looking forward to whatever replaces iPhoto. Mosquito says, I have no doubt Aperture's UI would be better. Dave, I have a feeling I'd have liked either, but I tried the trial for Lightroom a couple of years ago, and it was interesting. I actually was the other way around. I didn't like the UI for Aperture. I did like the UI for Lightroom. So, if you're really lucky, like I am, your camera has two card slots in it. And so my D600 allows me to shoot in both RAW and JPEG. So I tell the camera, use one card slot for RAW and one card slot for JPEG. The advantage of that is I get both. So if I'm shooting and I know in a real hurry, I have to get some pictures posted, I'll grab the JPEG card and start uploading JPEGs. But if I know I have time for post-processing and editing to make pretty pictures like you see here in the wall behind me, then I will do it with the NEF, the RAW file. The other issue is when it comes to printing. If you are going to print stuff off, especially at large physical sizes like some of these images are, you want to be shooting in RAW. You want to be shooting with the original size of the file, because once you start manipulating this stuff, the file sizes can get bigger or smaller. With JPEG, you're going to stay small. And that's one of the problems I was having with some of these things, was that I only had the JPEG and I couldn't blow them up to be as big as I wanted them to. So that's one other issue. If you're going to be printing at fairly large physical sizes, 11 by 17, 13 by 19, 24 by 36, you definitely want to shoot in RAW. If you have any questions about any of this kind of stuff, as always, send me an email on air at yourmaclifeshow.com. I love getting emails from you guys, and I love to help you guys out in figuring out for this photography stuff. It's my passion. So check it out. Send me an email if you get a chance. MacMan says memory cards and HD space is cheap. That's why I shoot with RAW plus JPEG. For me, the JPEG is usually good enough, but having the RAW for when you want to tweak an image is great. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%, MacMan. What I tend to do is I will come home from a shoot, open the JPEG card up, or cards as the case may be, and because they're smaller file format, they move from the camera to the desktop faster. They load in my file in my image editor faster. I can go through them and throw out the bad ones faster, and then pick and choose from the RAW card which ones I want to tweak. It helps me. That's my personal workflow, so it helps me work a little bit faster. Wong J, when I considered myself an intermediate level photographer, I was very much into RAW because of the post-processing benefits. Now that I consider myself an advanced photographer, I rarely shoot RAW anymore. Clients expect images more quickly. Another great point, Wong J. It depends on what the end result is. If the end result, you need speed. I know a lot of pro sports photographers. I've talked to one guy from Sports Illustrated. They don't shoot RAW. They shoot JPEG because they need to get those files back to their editor as soon as possible, as fast as possible. So they all shoot JPEG. So what is your end result going to be is the big question. Again, if you're an iPhone shooter, you're only shooting JPEGs. If you're a point and shoot shooter or a compact DSLR shooter and all you're doing is putting them on Facebook, shoot JPEG. If you want to be able to play around with your photos later, though, take a look at RAW. Take a look, and if you have the software that can do it too. That's the thing. Not all software will be able to deal with RAW files. Trying to see if there's anything else in the IRC chat room. Sports photogs also shoot JPEG because you usually can't bust mode RAW very well. Oh, you can't burst mode RAW very well. I would disagree with that, MacMan, if only because if you're a sports shooter, you're shooting the higher end stuff, the D3s, the D3Ss, the D4s, and on the Canon side, the Mark IIIs and those kinds of things. And their RAW burst speed with a battery pack on them can be upwards of 11 to 15 frames a second. So in RAW. I know on the D3S I shot in RAW, its burst mode with the battery pack was, I think, 9 or 11 frames per second, which is pretty doggone fast. Dave D says, I understand that RAW was proprietary to each manufacturer. RAW itself is a great question, Dave. RAW itself isn't proprietary. The file formats are. So Canon uses a different RAW file format than Nikon. Nikon uses a different one than Olympus. Olympus uses it. And so part of the problem is, and those file formats get updated on a regular basis from camera to camera. So quite often, you'll buy a brand new camera, but you have to wait for your software to get updated by Apple or by Adobe or by the camera manufacturer in order for it to work. It's a bit of a frustration, a bit of an annoyance that while RAW is a description of a photographic file. The actual file format is proprietary to each different company, which is really, really annoying. Something you have to keep an eye out for. Not really hugely a problem, but it can be a bit of annoyance. So I tell folks that if that's a concern for you, before you buy the camera, find out whether your favorite software supports it. You know, before I bought my Nikon D600, I made sure Lightroom could handle that particular camera's version of RAW files. Anything else? If you have any other questions, send emails to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. I got this great picture from Les Posen down there in Australia. He says, on my way to the dog kennel and listening to YML live. Okay, that's cool. It's cool in so many ways. Not that it's me, but that it's Les Posen is in, if I remember correctly, Sydney, Australia, on the other side of the world, and not just sitting in front of his computer, but on the other side of the world, driving his frickin' car and watching YML on his iPhone. Mind blown. We live in the future. It's just really cool. Les, thanks very much for sending that picture. I'm going to post it up somewhere. I got to send that somewhere. That's just wow. That is all kinds of cool. Thanks very much, Les, for posting that. Emails to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. MacMan says that cable looks like it's about to break. Does anyone know if the new Photos app in iOS 8 will let me keep more than 1,000 photos in my photo stream? No one knows, 100% sure. This is from Jane. No one knows, Jane, but I asked someone I know who works on the Aperture team, who's probably working on the Photos team, although I didn't ask him what that. He said, most likely yes, because of the new way Apple's going to do iCloud. Now, you'll be able to keep as many photos in your photo stream as you have storage space. So if your 1,000 photos only take up 1 gigabyte, which is probably about right, then yes, you'll be able to see all 1,000. If your 2,000 will take up 2 gigabytes, you're fine. But once you get over the 5 gigabyte limit, then either Apple isn't going to let you upload them, or it's going to limit you to the last X number of shots taken in the last month or whatever it might be. So keep that in mind. Most likely Apple will allow you to keep more than 1,000 photos in your photo stream. It's a funny question. Any way to spot a fake lightning cable off of eBay? And my response was, don't buy off eBay. The problem is the lightning cables you see off eBay may or may not be from reputable manufacturers. If they're from reputable manufacturers, you're saving a significant amount of money. Apple's lightning cables are $30. eBay lightning cables are $10. The problem is, if that's a fake lightning cable, it could either A, break easily. Now, don't tell me that Apple's break easily too. I know. Or it could actually cause an electrical issue for you physically. It could catch fire in theory. There have been cases of these fake, unapproved Apple cables catching fire and causing significant damage. So it's hard for me to say, don't buy off eBay because it's cheaper. Apple charges us far too much for those cables in comparison to what you can get even from a reputable manufacturer. But that being the case, I would look for a reputable manufacturer that's not on eBay. If you want to buy a Belkin lightning cable, go to Belkin.com. Go to other companies, other places that you can trust more so than some random seller off of eBay. Mosquito says, I saw a teardown a while back comparing an Apple charger to a knockoff. It was sad. Yeah, they don't have the same attention to detail quality as an Apple one does. MacMan, don't buy off Fleabay. Yeah, I can't disagree with you on that one. Jason Painter, talking about collaborative photos that we talked about on last week's show, says, interesting topic. I would not have thought of working with someone else to modify a photo. I can see the uses. I don't like to use many effects on my photos. I try to keep them natural. I used to rely on the iPhone's HDR mode to compensate for poor exposure, but now that I've got a camera that can shoot in RAW, I put more effort into getting better exposure, and my photography has improved due to this. Yeah, there's no doubt about that, Jason. The better photographer you are, those folks who've taken my class know that one of the things I say is I want to get it right in the camera. I don't want to fix it in Photoshop or fix it in Lightroom. I want to tweak it in that software, but I don't want to have to go, oh, God, I got to fix this whole thing. I'd rather get the composition and the exposure and the subject matter right in the camera first. And that's what I teach in the class, is how to get it right in the camera. But then have the freedom, obviously, these two shots that you see here, for those folks watching the video, these are not the way that scene looked. Obviously, too blue and too orange. But this is when I took them into software, into Snapseed in particular, and Lightroom, and messed around with them to create art. To create something that I thought was kind of cool, kind of interesting. That I messed around with it more in those apps. But yeah, in general, you want to get it right in the camera first. Arcsign says, Shawn, I shop Big Lots and often find made for iPhone labeled cables for $16. They're made for iPhone labeled, but are they still counterfeit? I mean, just because it says made for iPhone doesn't necessarily mean that it's approved, sanctioned by Apple. Alan Nuss says he won a copy of Backblaze on last week's show. He says, a backup is going on right now, and I don't see any slowness on the machine or internet use. Thanks for that, Alan, because that's important. I don't want to do any kind of backups that slow my machine down. One of the reasons why I hated the original version of Time Machine was I could tell once an hour when Time Machine was working, because my machine turned into molasses. And it was almost unusual for 10 minutes. The newer versions of Time Machine have certainly gotten better in that regard. So it's good to hear that Backblaze doesn't slow your machine down. Anthony Gonzalez, listening to this week's archive. When I first saw Disney's Magic Band in action on one of their videos, I began to wonder myself if that was what Apple had in mind. Just some quick notes on your comments. Disney does not charge per ride. It's a one-price theme park admission that you can get as part of a package. They encourage you to use their app to pre-pick your ride times and dining reservations up to months in advance. The band keeps all that data so you can just show up and ride and eat using a sort of fast pass entry. It even serves as your room key at the resorts. The prices of food are always available. They haven't gotten that sneaky yet, besides their myriad of sites available with that info. Like Apple, Disney's intent is to make things easier. Of course, it helps if you buy a bit more at the stores and the stands. They previously included all the services on the band on their room key. When you used to check into the resorts, they put your credit card info on the room key. With the room key, you can make purchases, enter the park, get fast pass, etc. Only difference now is you can wear it. I believe I read the band is waterproof, so it can withstand the rain in water parks. I think this is only in Florida's Disney World, not Disneyland yet. At least that it wasn't last time I read. By the way, they've also begun to customize the bands. You can put character add-ons on them for the kids, or they'll have special event ones, like for Star Wars they recently had. I think it was then that I began to see what I thought as what Apple will do. My wife and I are huge Disney Park fans, so I can't wait to try it next time we go. Great show, as always, Tony Gonzalez. Taylor Lowry also sends me an email with regards to my comments about Disney. First of all, Disney World is the one in Florida. Thanks very much for that. I don't know how good way to remember that, he says, but that's how it is. I've been to Disney World several times. Yeah, I know. Screw you, Taylor. Actually, no. I'm not a guy who has ever had any urge to go to Disney World or Disneyland. To me, my theme park of choice is Cedar Point. Is it Cedar Point? Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio, where they've got like 37 roller coasters. I don't need the Disney stuff. I don't need to see Disney branded stuff. I want to go to a place that has just a metric buttload of roller coasters. That's Cedar Point. One of my most disappointing things about living in the States was not getting to Cedar Point, Ohio. That would have been so much fun. So no, I'm not jealous of you guys for going to Disneyland. He says, I know what it's like both before and after the Magic Bands. I've only stayed on park at one of the resorts in the monorail. All prices are listed wherever you're buying something, just like in real life. Rides don't cost anything extra. You pay for admission to the park, but once inside, you ride whatever you want. There's a thing called Fast Pass. Most of the really popular rides have a standby line and a Fast Pass line. You have to have a fast pass for that ride to get in the fast pass lane, which will be much shorter than the regular standby line. At sit-down restaurants, the prices are on the menu. At quick-serve food places, the prices are up on the sign, just like everywhere else. The band replaces the magnetic cards like a hotel room key, and that did the same thing. Using a magic band to buy things does make it easier to buy more stuff without realizing how much you're spending, but so does using a credit card. I don't see how that has anything to do with the magic bands. I think it has something to do with the perception, Taylor, that when I pull out a credit card, I know this is a credit card. I know this is not magic plastic. And so I wonder how many people will get caught up in the magicness of this. Maybe you guys can tell me, do they give you a receipt? So you can see the prices of the thing you bought? But yeah, at least with a credit card, I know I'm swiping. I know I'm putting in my PIN number. I know there's a direct relationship between me giving you this card and money coming out of my bank account. So maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way, but thanks for that. The card works as you can check it. They give you a room key, plastic card. So the card is your room key. It's a charge card. It's a park admission. Way to get fast passes. 4-digit PIN. Use your card in a turnstile machine at the entrance. Now for the magic bands. Long story short, instead of the card, now you use a magic band. That's it. That's the difference. Getting into your room, hold your magic band up to the reader. Charging somebody in the room, hold your magic band up to the reader. Admission into the park, hold your magic band up to the reader. Fast pass? Okay, this is the only one that's a real difference, he says, and it's a significant one. There aren't fast pass machines anymore. Use a Disney phone tablet app to make fast pass reservations. It's a messy and convoluted process that involves making a Disney account online, selecting the day in the park, choosing between some options, and so on. You want to get fast pass for the whole group? You have to link everyone's Disney accounts together, choose some options, blah, blah, blah. Very complicated and frustrating. And he's right. Disneyland in California isn't using the magic band. They use the cards, but without the park admission on them, you have a separate paper ticket for that. Taylor Lowry in Dallas, Texas, he had a whole bunch more detail in there, but thank you guys all for helping me understand the whole Disney World thing and how these bands are going to work. I don't see anything in Wonderland, Backblaze. Mosquito says Backblaze is good. I wish my bandwidth was just as good. Mosquito says this technology sounds like another one of those things that will become second nature to people who are now 15. People who are now over 30 might disagree. Certainly most people over 40. I don't disagree with you on that. That being said, I really believe that not only is this the future, but I think it's the future of Apple. I think this is what the iWatch is going to be. It's not going to be a watch. I think this is going to be, if you watch the video of Tim Cook and the IBM CEO being interviewed on CNBC, excuse me while I have a refreshing drink of my beverage. Somebody was saying, what's that thing on Tim Cook's left arm? It's a Nike Fitband, Zapruder. Come on. You really are people really this stupid that they're really this dense? They think that Tim Cook would be walking around in public with the iWatch on his wrist or the iBand on his wrist? No, you frickin' morons. Jesus. But I think that's where Apple's going with this. They're going to start off, I believe, with health and home. With health data, and maybe it won't even be that you buy it. Maybe the health data thing will be from hospitals. That hospitals will buy these things and put patient details on them. And then when you get checked into the hospital, they'll put an iBand on your wrist that can then be read by a device on an iPhone, much like a Square card reader. I think then Apple will start, maybe in conjunction with this, selling these things as a home device, in the sense that, wouldn't it be great? How many times have you walked to your door? You've gone shopping. You've come home. You've got your arms full of groceries. Wouldn't it be nice if you didn't have to put down those groceries to dig your keys out to unlock your door? Maybe an iBand could unlock your door for you, either by swiping it on a keypad, which is unlikely because you have to retrofit your house. And all this stuff is unlikely because you have to, not unlikely, but less likely because you have to retrofit your house. But what about it being location aware? Sure, you have to buy a new lock for your house. And the new lock for your house has Bluetooth LE, low energy. And you pair up your door lock with your iBand. So when you get within a foot, 2 feet of your door, it unlocks automatically and you walk into the house. That's a possibility. Same thing could be used for cars. Right now, a lot of cars have what they call keyless entry, where the fob on your keychain that you use to lock the doors, you don't have to put the key in the ignition to start the car up. There's a big old start button. Or you don't have to unlock the door physically. Just being close to it unlocks the door. And in theory, locks the door too when you walk away. I think Apple's going to do this in slow steps, in increments, yearly increments. Maybe the medical stuff first, and maybe the home stuff first, and then maybe the fitness stuff too. I think this is the way we're going to go with this. But yeah, I agree with you, Mosquito. Ben Bajarin had a neat article about age groups and watches and who wears them and who doesn't. Over 40, a lot of people do. Under 20, very few do. And what Apple, or any manufacturer for that matter, has to do is find a way to get something on this piece of real estate that's so valuable, we want to put something there that we haven't put on before. You know, for me, I love my Tissot watch. Love my Tissot watch. I can't leave the house without my Tissot watch. So for Apple to replace my beautiful, wonderful Tissot, they've got to find something that is more compelling to me than that. And that being the case, I think an iBand would work. From the point of view of it wouldn't replace my watch. I could still have my Tissot right where it always is. But next to it, an elastic, a rubberized, a iWatch, a bracelet of some kind. Or you could wear it on the other wrist. That's why I don't think there isn't going to be any such thing as an iWatch. ArcSign says, what is the difference between that functionality being supported by an armband versus being supported by the iPhone? Well, ArcSign depends on how it works. It's a good point. I mean, you could do low energy Bluetooth right off the iPhone, where you walk up to your car door or your home door and it would open up. It wouldn't work that way with a hospital, for example, if only because if the hospital is buying these things and giving them out to you, they're not going to do that with iPhones. If you're going to rent it at the hospital, you don't want the hospital to have access to your iPhone. They don't have access to your armband. And it would just be another way for Apple to do this kind of stuff. You could do it either way. You could do it with the iPhone or the armband. You're right that none of this stuff completely replaces the iPhone. I think a lot of it's going to be working together with the iPhone. The Fitbit kind of data, obviously, can't all be on the iBand. Some of it got to be on the laptop. It's got to be on the computer. It's got to be in the cloud. It's got to be on your iPhone. Brian Monroe says, for people who are not wearing watches, they have to not be annoyed by cheap materials. Yeah, Apple's not going to make this sort of cheap plastic that's going to abrade your arm or cause you any sort of distress or anything else like that. I can promise you that. Any more emails? Let me just check my email box, then we'll give out some prizes. No more emails. As always, email on air at yourmaclifeshow.com. Let me know what you think about all this stuff, about the idea of these bands in general, about Flipboard, about cooperative art, about Apple and IBM. Email on air at yourmaclifeshow.com. Again, big thanks to the folks at MacFun, Joby, Epson, Oloclip, Lowpro, Backblaze, and Pixelmator. We're going to give away a copy of MacFun's software. MacFun makes the wonderful Snap Heal software, which I have used far too often to get rid of telephone lines in images, in photos. It also makes some software called Intensify, FX Photo Studio Focus, Color Strokes, that I really like, and Lost Photos. Check them out at www.macfun.com. Going to go to the folder with all the names of the folks who have entered our virtual contest. Go to the website, yourmaclifeshow.com, and you can enter the Friends of YML contest. It's right at the top of the page. Just click on the link, fill out the entry form. Please put in your real name. Don't put in a fake email address, because then I can't tell you you've won. and that comes to me. I drop your name into a virtual hat, and you are set up for the month. You have to do it each and every month, though. If you're a subscriber to Your Mac Life, which makes you one of my favorite people, subscribers automatically get their name put into the drawing. So make sure this is set up correctly. There we go. Okay, I'm going to scroll. You guys are already, some of that. Brian Monroe's cheating. He's already said stop. So I'm going to go out to winner of the Mac Fun software is our friend Paul Driver. Paul, congratulations. Chiron. Paul is down there in, speaking of Disney, I think Paul works for Disney, if I remember correctly. I know Paul lives down there in Florida with his with his husband Steve. Both nice guys. We've met them several times at Macworld Expo. So thanks very much for Paul for entering our contest. Now we can give away 3 copies of Backblaze. You go to the website at backblaze.com. Make sure I get that right. Backblaze. Yeah, Backblaze. Their Twitter handle, by the way, is backblaze.com. Backblaze. Twitter, at Backblaze. Online backup made easy. Backblaze.com is the website. Just cloud backup. We're going to draw 3 names out of the virtual hat for that. So someone say stop, and I will pick the name above and below. Brian Monroe still cheating. He's anticipating it. It's going to go out to, as soon as it stops moving around, Donald Hall. Congratulations to Donald Hall. You've won a copy of Backblaze. I'm just writing this down so I make sure I know who wins what. Also going to go out to Thomas Van Hassel. Thomas is in Denmark. Backblaze. And finally, the one above that one is Jeff Schaefer. Jeff doesn't say where Jeff is from, but Jeff Schaefer, you've won a 3-month free copy of Backblaze at backblaze.com. Again, if you are in the Prince George, British Columbia area on September the 20th, Saturday, we are doing the Photography Secrets Revealed class up there in Prince George. Thanks to my friend Vito Mori for helping me set that up. Please check it out if you have the opportunity. Go to startingpointphotography.com. And this Friday at 6 p.m. Pacific time, we're doing a tips and tricks class, 2 hours of live video via Google Hangouts. You can be wherever you are at 6 p.m. Pacific time. You can be at home, you can be at the office, you can be your jammies. I don't care. You watch me do the tips and tricks. I can hear you if you want. I can see you. I ain't gonna be looking at you, but I can see you if I needed to. But it's a great class. We do the tips and tricks, the 10 things you need to know to take better photographs with the camera you already have. If you're interested in that, send me an email to Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com. I want to say thanks very much to our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com for being here and joining us. Also, thanks to you guys, as always, who tuned into the show, whether you're listening in live or the archive. I appreciate you guys being here, as always. Thanks very much. My name is, I'm going to do this again. As always, I've been Shawn King, and you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya. Why is there no sound? The hell have I done? All right, try that again. 3, 2, 1. See ya.